Welcome to our financial wellness uh, podcast from Dollars and Good Cents and Seedling. We have several guests today. Tony's coming. He's been here before, expert in the insurance industry. And then you've met everybody else, Aubrey from DGSF, Debbie from DGSF, and then we've got Richard from Seedling. Today, we're going to be focused on workplace benefits. With that, we are going to give you a brief overview of where benefits were in the past, where they're at now. Then we're going to get into what are some of the different types of benefits that are out there. Then we're going to have a discussion about what are the right benefits for you? Where are you in your spectrum of what you need for benefits for you and your family? So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then depending on where you are in your life, you're probably going to change your job once, twice, or more as you're growing in your careers. So what is the transportability of your benefits? So thanks everybody for joining. Let's get right into it. Who wants to start out with the quick overview of benefits then and now?
Okay. Well, it's okay, guys. I'll go ahead and take that one because benefits have really changed over the last 30, 40 years. And I would just say that years ago, it was common for an employee to start working right out of high school, or maybe if they went to college, then they would work at the same company and they would retire 30 or 40 years later. They would receive a set pension that they would receive monthly until they die. Now, that pension was typically paid for fully. They would also typically get fully paid for healthcare benefits when they were offered. So that was something that the employee did not have to contribute to. Now, today, it's likely that a person is going to have several jobs in their working career, as Larry suggested, and that their career paths could span more than one industry. So when you're thinking about your retirement buckets, it's not as simple today as it was back then, but it also provides tremendous opportunities. Now, there are very few employers who still offer what I would call proper pensions. They are mostly government and some unionized companies. However, employer matches such as 401ks or other retirement plans are often part of the benefits package and can really boost your retirement savings, especially if there's contribution or what they call an employer match. So that's free money. So that's what I would say is the benefits overview now and then.
Deb, for that introduction to that. Tony, you want to add something?
Yeah, so I think another important thing, and we were talking a little bit about this pre-show, is there was a transition from the companies paying for all of the employee benefits to what's called the cafeteria style approaches, where they give the employees an allowance of a certain amount of dollars, and the employee gets to allocate it towards whichever benefits they choose. However, usually there's a significant gap between the allotment that you receive from your employer and all the benefits that you probably want to choose. So that's also been a major transition where somebody who's in a workforce 20 or 30 years ago may have had all their benefits paid for, but now you have to pay for a pretty good portion of your employee benefits.
That's a good point, Tony. Okay, so let's talk about what types of benefits are out there. So if we're talking about what Debbie and Tony just brought up about the current, what are my options? What do I need to think about? So if I get this cafeteria style, I know I'm not going to have enough money. So the company I used to work for, they gave you some. And if you went with the lowest on everything, you could get maybe 75% of the benefits. But if you wanted some extra benefits for your kids or some other things, yeah, your money ran short pretty quickly. So what types of benefits are out there?
I can do a quick run through. On the insurance side, usually employees will receive the potential to purchase medical insurance, dental insurance, oftentimes vision insurance, disability insurance, that's long-term disability insurance. Employers may even offer long-term care insurance. They'll offer life insurance. And this is where it gets tricky on the life insurance is because sometimes it's supplemental life insurance, and we can go deeper on that. And then they offer different kinds of flexible spending accounts. They have a healthcare spending account. They have a dependent care spending account. They may have a high deductible spending account for if health insurance plan with a high deductible. So you can see that this can get pretty convoluted. So you want to concentrate on the basic benefits. And then, of course, you have the retirement plans, which is usually with a public employer, a 401k. And if you're with like a state government employer, you might get a 403b. And I'm not sure which employees get a 457. Deb, do you
State.
know which employers?
Yeah, I have two 457s. Yeah.
So that would
So-
be state employees, Deb.
Right, state or local, depending on what it is. But 403B and 457s are the two that you float between.
Okay, what do unions get?
The union in New York did a tax deferred annuity. That's what they did. They did what's called a TDA, which is very flexible. You can borrow from it. It is very dynamic, and it's very nice. It really is. But there are some benefits and drawbacks to having a tax deferred annuity. But as far as but in other states that I've been in, working in the public sector, it was a 403B. That's the other ones that were offered.
Yeah, and some states call the TDA the TSA. So if you have a TSA in California, it's the same thing.
Interesting. So now you've got me completely confused.
Yeah, this is not complicated at all.
No, and
Not
this
at
is
all.
this is why we're talking about it, because there are so many options, and we want our listeners to be able to say, hey, I need to be able to go in and kind of learn about what these benefits are, and don't be afraid to ask. Because as Tony talked about, I mean, there's a lot of insurance benefits, accidental benefits, and those kind of things, but there's some other ones that come in that can be really helpful. Educational assistance. Some companies will offer educational assistance for the employee and or the children. There will be employee discounts, depending on what happens. If you're in retail or things like that, you can get employee discounts. One of the things that I see a lot of in especially larger companies or like family-owned companies is, and especially if it's for employees that are kind of higher up, so it'd be management, are employee stock options or restricted stock unit benefits. And those, I will tell you that those are taxable. You get them, and depending on whether it's an ESO or whether it's an RSU, you end up paying tax on it at various times, depending on how long it is and when you get vested. So that's a completely different topic, but employee stock options or restricted stock units are, again, it's a benefit that you're getting as an employee of the company.
And then I think ESPP still exists too, right? Or
that is correct. Yeah.
So you've got another option there.
Yep.
So I'm going to play the layman with all you experts here. So let's kind of put this in a bucket and talk a little bit about what should I be looking for as an employee coming into a company. And let's start with that big broad band of medical benefits. So Tony mentioned, there's this cafeteria. Well, let's do the cafeteria and let's put it kind of like the Golden Ranch or the Golden Corral or whatever. So let's go to the main course, which would be medical benefits, right? We'll get to the desserts and salad and all that stuff as we fill up, because I think most people are really concerned about medical benefits out of the gate as a young employee. And then the other things working into retirement are really critical. So we'll make sure we cover those next. Medical benefits, what are we looking for there?
Well, with medical insurance we're thinking about, first we want to think about what our needs are going to be. If we're older or if we have health issues, then we're going to want to make sure that we have insurance with what's called a lower deductible. Now, a deductible is how much you pay annually as your share of the health insurance. Then there's another part, which is your copay or coinsurance, which is how much you pay each time you visit a doctor or get a medication. And those copays can be different. Maybe $10 for a doctor's visit and maybe $25 every time you get a prescription filled. So you want to think about those things, because the higher the premium you pay, the lower your deductible and coinsurance are going to be. And conversely, the lower the premium you pay, the higher those are going to be. So if you're younger and healthier and you're not taking any medications, you may be going for your annual physical, well, then you can get away with paying a lower premium. But it's one of those things that you want to assess and think about that trade-off between the premiums and how much you're going to pay. So the easy way to do it is to take a look at your last year's medical expenses, how many times you went to visit the doctor, and multiply that by your copay. Then you want to add up how many medications you had refilled, how much you pay for those, and that will help you figure out the balance, between the premium that you paid. Is it worth it to pay a lower premium and those higher costs? Or can you pay a higher premium and then save a whole lot of money on your prescriptions?
For my husband and I, when we got married and we're trying to decide on the next year's plan, we were also kind of thinking ahead and knowing that we wanted to have a baby, I guess we're going to try to conceive, and then, knowing the baby would be born the following year, we chose a plan according to that. So both of us were healthy, not on any medications, no diagnoses or anything, but knowing that we were going to have an inpatient hospital expense, we upgraded our plan based on what we would normally purchase, because we figured the overall cost when we looked at the deductible and the out-of-pocket max, et cetera, that helped us determine which plan we were going to purchase. So also thinking ahead, if you have any new diagnoses, or if there's going to be an upcoming procedure, or if you have something that you're concerned about, even that you want to explore, like let's say you suspect you have sleep apnea and you want to get that looked at, and you're pretty confident about that, maybe knowing that, and that might be a bad example, but knowing that you're going to pursue medical treatment and you might want to see a specialist, you might consider that when you select your plan for that year. So thinking ahead is an important factor too, I think, in this discussion.
Very good point, Aubrey. Tony, you had something to add.
Yeah, the other big consideration is what's called in-network and out-of-network, and that will impact how much you pay for both medical care. So, and whether it's seeing a doctor or for hospital care. So you want to check, because the networks change from year to year. So each year you want to make sure that you're checking to make sure that your doctors are still in network. And then it also works the same way for your medications. The health insurance companies have something called a formulary, and those are the medications that they cover at different rates. So you want to make sure that your medications are still covered under a certain plan, because that can also change from year to year. So you're thinking of three things. You're thinking what Aubrey discussed is, do you have any planned procedures, related activities? You're thinking about that, trade-off between premiums, deductible, cost, co-pays, and then you're also thinking about, is your physician and medications in network covered, and at what rate?
Very good. I do want to add one thing in here at this point also, is that what is your status in the world of healthcare? I think you've covered that. But one of the things I missed when I got out of the military, so I'm a veteran, and I went to my service officer, did the normal channel when I got out, and I have a disability, a certain percentage of rating. If you're honorably discharged and you have a percentage rating, you are then allowed to use the medical center for a lot of different things, including your medications. There's some caveats about what percentage you are, if you can then get eye and dental and that, but your basic healthcare, basic GP, and some specialty clinics, if you have any disability and you're a veteran, go find out what you're authorized to do at the VA before you go pick a health insurance plan that you're going to pay a ton of money for. And then you could have saved all that money by using your benefits. So I would caution that. The other caution I'll put there, though, is your spouse may not be able to get on your benefits if you're VA. That's probably true. So when I was married, it made sense to use the company benefits to include my wife, even though I had VA eligibility. But now that we've gotten older, I use the VA and we pay for her Medicare Medicaid or Medicare, whichever one it is. So we could separate and we could still both be okay. But it's good to understand where you're at in your life as you're picking those. Deb, you had something to add.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of just add one thing because a lot of different things we talked about. But one of the things that, when Tony was talking about the different things to think about, when he's talking about the premium is what each employee is going to have to pay out of their paycheck typically for their portion of the insurance. And another thing to think about is, we talked about premiums, we talked about deductibles, which is how much you have to pay out of pocket before the insurance really kind of kicks in, and what your copays are, which are a separate thing. The other thing to be mindful of is what is your out of pocket max, which means how much at the end of the year. I mean, when you say 2024, if a policy has an out of pocket max of $8,000 and it covers your whole family, once you reach that $8,000, then you're kind of done. So there's a lot of benefit there to saying, as Aubrey was talking about, procedures. Timing of procedures can be really beneficial if something like that has happened. So again, that all is part of your financial health. I mean, I don't wish anybody to have to go have procedures, but if one is coming and you've already met your out-of-pocket max, it'd be better to get it done in November, December and have it all covered than to wait until January and then you've got your deductible again. So timing really can be very important, and that can have a real direct impact on your pocketbook.
Deb, I would add that not only timing of a procedure, this is something that happened to us. We timed it so that everything was done in the allotted time or after we met our out of pocket. And when you mentioned out of pocket, our out of pocket was, I believe, $8,000. And then when you said, and we're done, we just want everybody to know that, no, then you don't have to pay anything anymore. That, you're not done with medical coverage. They'll still cover everything. But we planned everything. We did it. And apparently the rules state that it has nothing to do with when the procedure was done. It has to do with when it was billed. So it turned out that they billed it about 2-3 months later in January, February, and we had to pay but the procedure was done in about November, December, or what it was done when it was supposed to be done. And so you got to know the rules of this game and look up everything. And before you have a procedure done, you need to call your insurer. You can't just say, the doctor says you have to have this and we have to do it now. No, sir. We're going to stop right here. I am going to call my insurance and see if it's even covered. I said yes to a procedure the doctor said I had to have one time, and $3,000 later, because, he said, no, you have to do this. And of course I figured my insurance was going to cover it. You have to call and see what they will cover. There's a lot of fine print. So it's just a cautionary tale of always call and always be sure and always research, even when you're told you must have something done. Hold on, let me see what this is going to cost. And remember that timing of billing. That's a big one.
Yeah, those are all good tips. The other thing that I've learned through insurance after I kind of retired is the understanding of copays and your annual payouts, because your copays don't count towards that a lot of times. The procedure money counts to that. And then there's some insurance, I won't mention one, there's one in Washington I had for a little while, that they don't pay anything until you meet your annual. They don't even pay the copays until you meet your annual. So you got to figure out, copay, does that mean I go to the doctor and it says copay $40? Okay, I can deal with that. But if that doesn't count before you've met your annual, then you have to pay that whole doctor visit. So some copays are, you go to your GP in network, as Tony was saying, and they will cover the bill and you pay your 40 and you're good. But they may not count that toward your annual. And then there's others that until you get to your annual, they don't pay a dime for anything until you get to your annual. So you got to kind of know that, because you can put yourself in a really bad situation for the rest of the year if all of a sudden you're thinking 8,000, you can work out the procedures and I can say no to a procedure. But then every time you go to the doctor, you've got a $400, $500 bill. They start to add up. Tony, you had something to add to this.
Yeah, and real quick, because I don't want to go down too many rabbit holes, but related to what Richard's saying, the other thing with the procedure too is you may be going into, let's say, a hospital that's in network, but you have to make sure that the practitioner who's performing the procedure is also part of the network because they may be somebody who's not part of your network. So, that's obviously beyond the scope of enrolling for your employee benefits, but it shows the importance of planning ahead and thinking about your needs before you just automatically go, okay, these are the benefits I selected last year. I'm just going to choose the same thing. That's that's the bottom line, I think, of what we're all saying is that you have to take time to understand what you're selecting and why you're selecting it.
Tony, that's a great point. And just to even, further that, when researching, when planning ahead, one thing to ask about to any employer is this question, which I didn't know until my wife and she ended up getting the whole benefit package, and we read the fine print, and it said, you are not allowed to put your spouse on your plan unless your spouse is not offered medical insurance with their employer. So if their employer offers it, then you are not allowed to put them on yours. But if your spouse doesn't have medical or is unemployed or whatever the case might be, then they can have, or is self-employed, then they can go on your medical. So just so many caveats and questions to ask. There's probably a really great site on the internet that can tell you every single one, but it's probably a book this thick if you printed it out of all the things to ask. But I think these are some of the most important ones.
Yeah,
I
so
know
I'm gonna
Tony has
try
a
to
great resource, I think, for that. Yeah. Yeah. Tony has
I
something
do.
out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
So
Sold.
So what's your
Tony.
resource, Tony?
So it's my book, The Get Ready Blueprint, which walks through all the factors in open enrollment. I do have a free newsletter that you can subscribe to where I cover the very basics of these things and provide recommendations and resources along with a free worksheet you can download from my website on how to calculate your health insurance premium and choose the deductible. It walks you through the calculations that I mentioned a while ago.
Very good.
Good
So
job.
one of the things I will say before we move to the next question, kind of summarizing up the medical benefits area, before we go on to 401ks and stuff, is that if you're in front of somebody and you're getting offered a job or you're in that interview discussion, they're going to ask you if you have any questions. You may be very hesitant to open the door to say, what are all your benefits, when start grilling them on this deductible and that deductible, this, that, and the other, which I don't blame you. I probably wouldn't do that either, because your goal is still to get that job. So when you get the offer, if that's the place you want to work, that's where you take a day when they hand you the forms and you go back and you figure out what you want. You don't have to grill them at the start of that interview process about all the benefits and stuff that are out there. Hopefully you got recommended by that job, or somebody said this is a good place to work or something. So you're getting there. But if you're new in your career, like I was when I started working for a construction company, I just needed money. So I worried about the benefits after I got in, but take the time after you get in to go over the form. Don't just start checking boxes while you're sitting in there trying to get on your thing. Ask if you can take them home and then go through your stuff. So,
Larry, I would agree with that. Ask if you can see at the time of the offer letter, when you accept the offer you're not going to get the entire detail of what the benefit package is. Correct. And what they offer and everything. And you're still trying to get that job, they can rescind that offer. So you still want to be very hesitant, even later in life. If you're somebody my age and you're interviewing for a different job at a different company, you don't want to grill them. The only place that they will start telling you that is after you start the job on day one. And then you will find out what I have done in the past and what I would do in the future. If I was going for another job tomorrow and I was looking and everything, I would go to websites like Glassdoor and other things to find out, to do my research on what other employees have put out there about, this company has Cigna or Aetna and they only cover this, and other things. There are the internet is very big and people put a lot of information on there. You could probably just Google or do a search on the company name and benefit package or health insurance cover, and somebody put it out there on a Facebook post or something. But I would definitely do that instead of asking them anything before getting the job, or whatever the case. Because, like I said, they're going to have you in an HR room when you're filling out those forms. You already accepted and started day one. They're not going to tell you anything. That's where the trap lies. That's how that works.
Quick caveat to what Richard's saying, though, is there are different job classifications within companies, and different group of employees get different benefits. So if you are looking on Google and you're searching up, let's say, Microsoft's benefits, Microsoft has a lot of divisions and they may all have different benefit packages. So that's the only caveat, is that when you do that searches, you want to make sure that you are getting something similar, to where you're going to be working.
So one of the best questions I ever got when I was doing interviews was, it was positioned perfect, I thought, after I was doing an interview on somebody. The gentleman said, "Hey, I'm very interested in this opportunity. I think it would be right for me, but I want to make sure it's right for both of us because I want to make the company successful and myself. So with that, if you were to put an offer forward, could you send me a link to your employee handbook, or could you send me your employee handbook?" That's not threatening to them. And then their employee handbook, though many of us back in the day took the employee handbook and said, "Oh, got some firewood to throw over there," those benefits will be listed in there and they'll be divisionally broke out. And most people have them on a link now, and HR is willing to share those if you're in the interview process. So a non-threatening way is, like I said, "Hey, I want to make sure this is the right opportunity for both of us. I'm very interested. If you were to send me an offer, would you mind letting me see your employee handbook at the same time?" You may get told no, but that's a simple question that's non-threatening. And I had a guy ask me that, and I was like, "Yeah, sure." So that's one way you do that. All right, so we've covered that in the cafeteria, the medical. Let's talk about retirement and insurance. What am I doing on that part? Because that's another whole can of worms. So we move from the main course. Let's work over to dessert. What do we have on our dessert menu here?
Well, retirement has a lot of options. And as I said at the beginning, it used to be where you would go in and you would actually get like just a pension plan. Well, that is now moved to more like 401ks, or if you're in the government, you would have 403bs or 457s, or if in some companies, if you're a smaller company, they may actually just have like an employee pension plan. They could have, if you're self-employed, you could do a SEP, right? You could do a solo IRA. There's a lot of different options you could do depending on your job and how you're classified, right? So there's a lot of different things. One of the more common ones, I think, again, as I said, if you're in government, it's typically going to be like a 403b or 457. Some 401ks, depending on where you are and if you're unionized or not, those are pretty standardized. And as you look through those, I mean, really, when we talk about what benefits are important to people, as we've already kind of talked about with the medical insurance and life insurance, if you're a family person or you're an older person, then the medical insurance and the life insurance is going to be more important. But if you're a young person, you're like, "Hey, I'm healthy. I don't need to spend all that money on health insurance. I'm going to get a high deductible plan. I'm not going to worry about it. But I'd really like to," and I'm hoping they do, that, "Hey, I'm going to get a jump start on my retirement and I'm going to start putting in as much as I can so I can let the time value of money work for me." And so when you go there, they're going to tell you about those. I mean, those are pretty straightforward, and it'll be generally depending on your salary. There's certain maxes. And as you guys have said, they're depending on what job you get in the company, you might be offered a different level of benefits, because in addition to retirement, right, which is a bucket, there's also things that you could get, which are bonuses. Typically, that's middle to upper management will get a performance bonus tier. I kind of liken that to retirement because it comes out in a big enough chunk that you pay attention to it, right? So those are different things you can think about in addition to the retirement plan itself. Again, because most of these, they're going to just say, "This is what you have." If the employer says, "We will," if you can put in 6%, that was a standard number for a lot of years, "but we will match you 3 to 4%. I always encourage people, max what you can, because if you can get an extra 3 to 4% of your salary, as free money, and you do that for 10 years, that's the significant amount of money that's going to be sitting there and growing. And it really is helpful for you to do those kind of things. The other benefit that will come in that relates to this is a lot of companies will actually offer, as part of their HR department, they will offer retirement planning services as well as potential legal services. So you don't have to say, I don't understand this, because you don't have to. You just make an appointment, you go and say, hey, I'd really like to know what my options are. And they're really pretty savvy about it. And they'll ask you questions about your goals and things like that. And then they can help dial you in. And so you could diversify what your retirement is in, if that's an option, and start to actually build your wealth. And that is just, again, outside of your salary, but something that you can look forward to as you get older. And it really is important, because one of the things I want to stress is 30, 40 years ago, like when my dad worked and then my dad retired, he just said, hey, I have my pension, I have my Social Security, and I have amount he put in his he had his own retirement account that he did, and on top of his pension, which was nice. So he gets a kind of a threefer, which is really fun. But what we need to think about now is that Social Security is not, in and of itself, is not going to provide virtually anybody with a standard of living that they became accustomed to while they were working. So that's why doing things like putting things into your retirement plan and starting to invest in those types of things, as early as you can, is really a wise idea, because that can become a big bucket of money. You just put it, I always say, set it and forget it. If you can do payroll deduction, take it right out of your check, you get used to not seeing it, and just let it go. And some people end up with very, very sizable amounts in their retirement funds that they are really glad later.
Yeah, so I think those are great points, Deb, and I'll throw a little personal experience in that, because I worked in corporate America in a large corporation, and when I started there, I wasn't offered as many benefits. My medical package wasn't as big. I wasn't eligible for stock options and things like that. But as I moved up, it grew and different things like that. But to keep it easy for where we're at, and what we're talking about, find out what you can make free money on when you're looking at the retirement piece. So 401ks, does that company match? What do you have to do to get the company match? Because when they match, that's free money. All right. The second thing that you can do is, do they offer like an ESPP program or stock purchase plan? Because they sell your stock at the lower number between a time limit, and you can, so if it goes up over 6 months and you can still buy at the lower, that's kind of free money for you. So when you're young and starting out, you may not need all that life insurance and all those different things going on and the highest deductible stuff, or lowest deductible stuff, but get your free money. Make sure you understand what that is out there coming from the company, and get that first. And then as you grow in the company, as I grew in the company, they wanted me to have legal insurance, as a director. So they offer legal insurance, or they have a legal company you could use, like Deb said. And you can start doing more than match and things like that as you get set. But at least try to get the free money off the table. All right. Is there another big bucket in that benefits thing that we should think about? Like maybe vacations and PTO and stuff like that? Because now let's go all the way back to the salad part. So what are those options? Before I do that, I think Tony had one more comment about the last section. Is that right, Tony?
Or actually, I was going to talk about the insurance benefits.
Okay,
but
go
I can do
for
that
it. We're
after.
still in that category of insurance and investments. It kind of wraps in that money part.
So the typical benefits that you can receive through an employer could be vision insurance and dental insurance. And for the most part, you're going to have the same issues as you do with the medical insurance, and thinking of in terms of the premiums, the deductibles, the co-pays, whether providers are in network or out of network. So those are basically going to work the same. Now, the other two big benefits you're going to receive, well, actually three, is accidental death and dismemberment insurance, which is usually coverage that is very cheap Now you have to think about it. If the insurance company is offering you something for very cheap, that means that they're probably not planning on paying out a benefit. So when you look at that and you go, wow, I can get $1 million of accidental death benefit for 50 cents a month, there's a good reason for that. The insurance companies know what they're doing. So that's something to think about with accidental death and dismemberment. And what that pays for is a permanent and total disability or death. And they have to be accidental in order to qualify. So that's one of the big benefits you'll receive. You'll also receive life insurance. And generally, the company will provide one times salary as part of that. Sometimes you'll receive 2 times salary. You have the option to purchase more coverage. Now, when you purchase more coverage, you may have to give proof of insurability. But at that point, when you're looking at purchasing that additional coverage, the thing you want to keep in mind is what the portability. Can you continue that coverage if you leave the employer? And is it cheaper to buy it individually? So if you're in super good health, you're going to be able to find term life insurance on the private marketplace for a lot cheaper. The other big benefit, and this is one of the most overlooked types of insurance, is disability income insurance. And what that does is that protects your income. And that is the most important coverage because we are all dependent upon our income if we are working. So you need to take a close look at disability insurance. And what's going to happen is you're going to be offered a percentage of salary. Usually it's either 50% of your salary or 60% of your salary that you can purchase. I would say buy as much as you can. The other huge thing to pay attention to is you're going to be offered a pre-tax benefit or a post-tax benefit. Now, people will look at the pre-tax benefit and they'll go, ooh, I can pay with pre-tax dollars and not be paying taxes on the premium. But the big thing is if you pay with an after-tax premium, yeah, you're taxed on the premium, but you receive an after-tax benefit. So your leverage is significantly bigger because when you receive that benefit, it's not going to be subject to income taxes if you select a after-tax or post-tax benefit. So when disability insurance, that's the big thing to look for. And I would say buy as much disability insurance as you possibly can because it's not going to match your pre-disability income.
And Tony, I'm going to ask this question because I don't know the answer to it. So hopefully you do. When you're buying disability insurance, I have not found a company that is portable to.
Usually not. Usually not.
All right. Okay, because that was one of our topics. All right, so let's move over to the salads. Time off, PTO time, maternity leave. What is that? Paternity leave now we have? That's been invented. That wasn't around while I was working, so it's a little different. What do we look for in that? A lot of times you don't have options. They tell you what you're going to get.
Right. I was going to say in some of the what I would call the icing on top of the cake benefits.
Yep.
Those are what those are. You don't necessarily get a ton of options as far as what you can do within that particular benefit, but you can choose which benefits you want because, like Tony talked about accident benefits. There's also adoption assistance. You can also maybe get gym memberships, right? I mean, because that's another thing as far as that ties into the healthcare, is that sometimes you can get a reduced healthcare premium if you are showing that you are exercising and trying to stay in good health. So sometimes you can use those in tandem to really help you do those kind of things. And, as you start to think about those, that's really great stuff. Another kind of I don't see it as much, I call this like a boutique benefit, is depending on the company, depending on what you do, a lot of times companies will offer meals and drinks that they provide to the employees that don't cost the employees anything because it's considered for the benefit of the employer. And so sometimes those can be pretty nice. And, a lot of times, I know when I worked in Portland, I got a transportation benefit. I got a benefit every month that paid for my parking spot. I didn't think that was a big deal until I realized I didn't have to pay for it and I had a set spot. You're coming in the morning and you want that. You want to get in where you need to go. It's nice to know that spot's yours. So a lot of times bigger companies will do that. Not always, sometimes it's more for the management people, but they will do those types of things. Again, we talked about tuition. That is a big deal because, again, for yourself, for your children, your spouse, those can be really, really helpful. And then, of course, the PTO. PTO is kind of the big new number. You can have as much time off as you want. People sometimes confuse PTO with vacation time because PTO can be paid, it may not be paid. It depends. So be mindful of that. If you say, I want to have a job where I get all the PTO I want, you need to find out if you actually going to get a check to go with it. But it does provide flexibility. And then, Larry, as you were talking about, we now have maternity leave time off. They have paternity leave time off. Some of the companies, as part of their PTO, are offering what they call emergency family leave time off, which means that some companies will give employees a week per year to say, if you have an ailing spouse or an ailing family member or something like that, you don't have to take your vacation or sick days. You can actually use that emergency family leave time. So that's been I think that's been a very attractive benefit for folks.
So it sounds like, I'm going to try to sum up that benefit, those types of benefits you just talked about, is that's not going to be what decides your job on or off your job, taking or accepting a job. That's going to be something as you're in the job, you're going to want to look through the handbook and see what your options are and make sure you understand your options. And one of the things that I've learned is that the more leniency they give can be good. So the company I work for, we had unlimited time off as long as you got your job done.
Right.
So that was really flexible when I had to go take care of my mom for 3 months, right? I could do a little work where I was at, but as long as I got my work done, I was good, but I wasn't getting paid any extra salary, or I wasn't getting paid vacation time or family time off. They didn't care. So it benefited me that way. But when I had nothing going on, it then becomes incumbent on myself to make sure I take some days off. Otherwise, I can work through the whole year and they're not going to raise the flag and say, hey, maybe you need some time off. They're just going to keep working you. So you got to balance that out. But some are very strict. They'll give you weeks of leave for your family. And then sometimes they're not very flexible on that. If you're having to take care of somebody longer than that, you may or may not get paid. So just know what those rules are when you get to that point. So very good discussion. Let's move on to how does somebody...
Actually, Larry, there was one other thing I wanted to mention on the vacation PTO side, for our maybe younger viewers or anybody starting out, or not, because a lot of this has been a new thing. If it is a remote job and working from home, there are a lot of stipulations. Let's say you work from home and you were hired in the state of Texas. You may not go to Minnesota for more than 7 days and work there and, not tell anybody, but you're still remote, because Minnesota says now you have to pay Minnesota state tax on it more than 7 days. They can track IP addresses. They'll know you were there for 7 days. Even if you were in a hotel room, you were there 7 days working. It depends. So you can't. And also, if you go to Europe, if you try to go on a beach and you try to what are they calling the it used to be the sneaky vacation or hidden vacation, where you were still remote working from a beach in Bali or a beach in Puerto Rico or wherever. They are cracking down on that because of all of the tax implications that are for the company and on the legal side. Yeah, they did say remote, but they said remote from where your primary residence is. So if they're asking, are you home? And you say, home is where the Wi-Fi is. No, it doesn't work that way. So I just wanted to add that, because that's been the stealth vacationing that's been going on is being cracked down on a lot. And so being a remote worker or work from home really does mean you have to work from home.
Yeah, and in the paid time off conversation too, I was going to say you definitely want to take a look at the different benefits, because again, we talked about maternity leave. Well, where I worked, maternity leave was not paid. And of course, you need time to recover after having a baby. physically and emotionally and mentally, and the baby needs you to be home. And then like where my husband works now, he gets 6 weeks of paid time off, and he's the paternal figure in the house. So it's very different based on where you work. And I know some companies offer like you can buy more vacation if you're a family that you have that financial bandwidth and you value vacations, you value trips, and or you value just more time at home with dad or mom, you can purchase more vacation. Or my husband just actually kind of cashed in some of his vacation because he had a bunch accrued, and he had just taken time off for a baby that was born in July. So he cashed in some of his vacation and we got a bonus paycheck. So, there's lots of different options. You have paid holidays, you have your actual vacation time, paid time off, and then, all the other benefits that we talked about. There's different companies offer different types of things. So depending on what you value, that might be something you want to look at. And those kinds of things will often be in the employee handbook, like Larry said.
I like what you just brought up, Aubrey, because the federal government may dictate some maternity leave and paternity leave, but they don't dictate what you get paid for that. Tony, you had a comment to add.
Yeah, I want to add a very important codicil to what Aubrey was talking about. So when she's talking about cashing out your PTO, it's important to monitor it because some employers have a cap on how much you can accumulate. So even if you're entitled to like 9 hours every pay period, once you reach a cap, they're not going to give you any more. So you lose that out. So you have to cash it out. And the trick with that is you have to make that election on your open enrollment the year before. So if you're going to cash it out for 2026, you want to make that election on your open enrollment this year in 2025. So you want to think about and see how much vacation you're going to be planning in 2026, for example, versus how much PTO you have, and to know how much you can accumulate each week. And you can just look at your pay stub to see how much you're accumulating each pay period, and you should be able to see the balance. So with all of these things throughout this financial wellness series, it all involves planning, it all involves tracking, and thinking about what you're going to be using.
Tony, I've actually seen it. The places that I've worked in the educational technology and telecommunication sector, every year it reset. There was no cashing it out. Use it or lose it. So that's a big one where basically that's why most companies shut down in December. Everybody's using it or losing it, and also if they don't let you bank it either. They will not let you take it over, to the next option year, or whatever. That's the use it or lose it part. And use it or lose it means also that there's no cashing it out unless you quit or unless you are laid off or fired. So therefore, there's no cash value to it unless you're leaving the company. That's the big caveat. I've never been in a company where you were able to every year cash out as many hours or days that you had. It was definitely use it or lose it.
Very, very good points. So we have talked about overview. We've talked about a type of benefits, gone through the cafeteria. So now that big thing is, and we talked about it a little bit, or I did, is that, depending on where you are in your life, you guys just spent, where are we at? Almost an hour talking about benefits. Which ones are right for me? How do I know that? I'll kick that off by what I kind of said is it's going to a lot depend on your age. Tony, I think you brought in that, you need to have a worksheet to kind of spread out so that you know what you used last year, what's your life looking like coming forward, what are you planning forward. So when you get to November 1st, and I'm going to say that because a lot of the programs open up in the first part of December that you can readjust, short of having a baby, a wedding, or a death. You can't change your benefits, as Richard was saying. So November 1st, you need to start making your plan. Hopefully you're watching what you're doing throughout the year and keeping track of it. But I'm going to say it's really hard to say what's best for you because everybody's in a little bit different life. but planning for it and kind of write on your calendar. November 1st, I need to come up with what my plan is going to look like for the following year. Does anybody want to add comments to that or change what I said? I'm open to that. I'm just
Yeah.
throwing that out there.
My wife and I spent weeks arguing and getting receipts out and going to Walgreens app and trying to find out how much did I spend for all the whole, because most pharmacies you can access that, the big ones, CVS, Walgreens, you can access your year and you can get all of that. So, and we were pulling everything like we were doing our taxes, just to find out, was it better to have lower coverage or higher coverage, or for the baby, how much did we spend? So yes, this can be daunting, but it's really worth a lot of dollars on the table. It's worth the time and energy to do it, because if you don't, you could be leaving a lot there. You really
My
could.
husband
And really getting into a bad place.
My husband had a procedure done last year, or 2 years ago, I guess it was 2023, and we paid cash for it, and it was $3,000 because my husband's insurance for our family is very expensive. And so then when he got a diagnosis, we decided to put just him on the policy, and covering the employee is not terribly expensive. So we just put him on there knowing that he'd need another procedure. And it actually cost us more to be insured because we paid for the premium, the monthly, and then we had bills rolling in $1,000 a year, for whatever, Japanese whatever I'm looking at that I can't, like, what is that? I don't know what that is, just, I say Japanese, like just gobbledygook that I'm reading. What, okay, that they're just billing for here and there, and another bill rolls in. It's been 6 months, so, but something that we have done in the past, it's been really helpful because, again, we are either doing some sort of health sharing thing, or in seasons we have gotten insurance knowing we were having a baby, just kind of depending, seeing that we're young and we're kind of probably talking to a younger audience. For those that have a high deductible plan, a lot of times you are offered what's called a financial savings account, an FSA. And that is a use it or lose it plan most of the time, I believe. Is that right, Tony? Use it or lose it? Okay.
Yeah, it's almost always.
Yeah. So you're given a pre-tax opportunity to put some money in there. Is that right? Pre-tax money. And then at the end of the year, you lose that. But that gives you the opportunity, let's say 25% of your money is taxed. That's money that you're getting to not spend on taxes, that is just going into an account, and it essentially comes with a card. And the card you can purchase. It seems to me, when I'm even looking at Amazon, so many supplements, different types of care is optional. Glasses. I mean, we've used glasses, dental, chiropractic.
It's like a debit card for medical,
Exactly. Yeah. It's a debit card for medical.
The best part of that is those benefits are after tax dollars that you're able to use it for you. So you're putting aside pre-tax dollars.
Okay.
You can also just get cash back medical reimbursement. So that's huge, is you're leveraging pre-tax dollars to receive after-tax benefits.
Wow. Okay.
That's why it's use it or lose it.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah.
Okay, Deb, you had something you wanted to add or talk about?
There's no one size fits all. And I think that pretty much most every employee would benefit from having healthcare coverage, good insurance coverage, and really pay attention to those retirement contributions, because those are the biggies. Those are the ones that are going to take you through when the big bills come, right? I mean, there's a reason why they say people file bankruptcy for medical reasons, because medical bills can be atrocious. So good healthcare coverage, and then starting again on the retirement contributions, just so you've got stuff sitting in the future that you can use. Because let's just say you have a medical bill and you're 30 years old and you have money in your retirement account. You can actually take money out of your retirement account with minimal impact to pay for medical bills. So there's a way, you can kind of use that as a dual benefit. So I think those are the big ones. And then again, families, as Aubrey has shared, and Richard has shared, you've got people that want to look at dependent care, FSAs, HSAs, right? And you're going to be wanting to keep track of those things. And it's also important to look at your out-of-pocket costs and what your maxes are going to be. So those are just some financial wellness strategies to think about, because not all policies are created equal. So those are, you just want to ask the questions. Life insurance, again, is another one, as Tony talked about, right? Having income life insurance can be really, really crucial. Just if something happens,
disability insurance,
right? And yeah, and in some companies offer disability insurance that they give the employees, but lots of them don't. And so those are great ones to do. And then again, if it's a family, I see a lot more families looking at the education assistance as well as the tuition reimbursement. Younger people are going to go, hey, I want the PTO, I want the gym memberships, right? I want the free legal services. And those are the kind of things. So again, where you are in your life, and those really kind of drive what those benefits are. But you have the ability to be able to capitalize on a lot of those.
Very good. I will say, Deb, to kind of iterate what you just said, as you know, my year has been really weird. So all the planning in the world, as I've gotten older, right? I had a kidney stone that had to be surgically removed. I had a heart incident, blah, blah, blah. I hadn't planned for all those, and I didn't put that away. But because I started investing when I was younger, my medical benefits took over, but I was allowed to get some money out to make sure I could pay those bills off that weren't covered under my insurance plan. So the other thing, just for sanity's sake, when you're going through this, is your decisions aren't going to, don't let your decisions be life ending or worrying about them, because the other thing that a lot of hospitals will do is, if you can show that you can't pay for them because you're paying for your benefits, you're doing your work, they will give a payment plan that's interest free. So you can start making payments on the stuff if you haven't met your deductibles and all of this stuff. There's some other options. So though this is important and you need to plan for it, you don't know what all is going to happen in the next year, when emergencies come. So the other thing we talk about in several of our podcasts and in our financial literacy is an emergency fund. So, when I was young, if I would have this conversation when I was young, and I'm trying to put myself in that young man's seat, I'm like, I don't have enough money to cover everything you guys just talked about. So pick and choose the things that are important as you're young and as you're growing. But understand that it's not the end of the world if something happens, because there's methods and ways to get through those crises. Just don't panic. Don't make some bad decisions early and often. All right. I think we talked a little bit about transportability of benefits as we were going through the benefits, right? So medical insurance, probably not going to transfer. They're going to give you a COBRA thing that's going to not be a good option for you. You're going to have to go look for insurance if you leave. Some of the life insurance may or may not transfer. So look at your handbook for that stuff. With that, is there anything else that you guys can think of that people need to be watching out for or be aware of as they're becoming employed or at the current employer? If they haven't ran the handbook, what do they go open up? Anything that we missed that we should be bringing into this conversation? Debbie, you want to start?
Well, the one thing, I mean, what you said too is, as far as if you're shifting from one employer to another, there's a lot of benefits that will stay where you left. One of the big things to think about is, if you have HSA funds, those will go through, you could put those into a trustee and those can transport. Another one is, and it's so important, and I see this so often, is if you leave an employer, you need to find out if when you leave, because you are now no longer an employee and you're no longer contributing and the employer isn't contributing for you, you may be required to move that money. Now, what some people think is, they go, oh, well, I'm just going to move it and they'll send me a check and then I'm going to go reinvest it. The smartest way to do that, you go to the HR, you go talk to them, you say, hey, I need to move the money. I know I need to move it. You want to do what's called a trustee to trustee rollover, because you'll get a form for taxes and it might have this big number on it. But if it's got a code G in the box, that means trustee to trustee rollover. You put it on your tax return, zero tax implication, zero penalties, zero things that you have to pay on it. So wanting to make sure that you know what to do with that, because I've actually had some clients where they left a company and then the company did something with their pension and things got changed. And now all of a sudden they can't find out what they've got, how much, where did it go, and what did they do to get it? And it really can be a little funky. So that's just something as you're thinking about, hey, I'm going to go explore this opportunity over here, but I've got money in this bucket for retirement. Just do that quick thing. What do I need to do? How can I move that? How can I put it where I can keep track of it? Now, it probably, you won't be able to keep it in a 401k because that's an employer plan, but you can take a 401k and you can move it over into an IRA easily. And just make sure it's a trustee to trustee rollover and you are good to go. Let it keep growing.
And when Deb's talking about a trustee is, you're probably talking about a company like Vanguard or Fidelity or Schwab. Those are the big companies that Deb's talking about. So you want to go directly from Schwab to Vanguard or whichever way you're going to go.
Or to a bank. Banks can do the same thing. So if you're more comfortable keeping it at your bank, you may not have quite the number of investment options, but if you are comfortable with that and that's where you want to keep it, then you can do it that way too. But it has to be a trustee because those are ERISA funds. Those are kind of like the employees' Social Security funds. So there's a lot of rules around it. And there's a lot of rules if you take the money and if you take it and you forget to you've only got a limited time that you can actually get the money, cash the check, and then reinvest it into a quote unquote IRA before you get dinged for it. And sometimes that ding hurts.
It's not only income tax, you also pay a 10% penalty if you're under the age
if you are not old
59 and a half.
Yep, if you are not 59 and a half and or have one of the very narrow reasons that make it to where you are exempt from the penalty. Yeah.
So that
good can be
point.
Big ouch. Big ouch.
Very good. Yeah, I will add this, that unless your company is managing their own investment account through whatever means that is, most companies nowadays use one of those companies that Tony's talking about, Vanguard, Fidelity. So I would encourage you that if your 401k is with Fidelity, you will probably get through the HR site a link to that site that they will show you through your employer site. But you can go to that company and you can get your login to go directly to that site. So if you leave that company, you can still get in and see what's there so you can work with them on a transfer. And a lot of times those larger companies will do a transfer directly for you out of that company 401k into something that they support offline. But it's good to have two logins. So I remember when I worked where I worked, I would log into the company website and I could see all my benefits. I could see what my 401k, all my investments. But I also had the back door through, and it was Fidelity at that time, where I could log into Fidelity and I could see everything I had with them. So when I left Oracle, I didn't move things right away, but I went and started working with Fidelity to make the different things that I needed to make and do the things I needed to do because I knew where my money was. So know where your money's at is the last thing I'll say. So with that, thank you guys very much. I know this has been a long one. So thank you for your time on a Friday night. I think this was a great episode. Tony, thank you for taking the extra time today to spend with us. And then the regulars, they're starting to get to know your faces. So don't be surprised if there's some comments. And we will talk to you soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
To view the entire series, go to centralimpact.org.